Hello and welcome to the Keep Your Cool Mama podcast, where we are encouraging the everyday mom to pursue her dreams and discover her own greatness. Hey cool mamas, this is Sheila and you are listening to the Keep Your Cool Mama podcast. Hello ladies, welcome back. How are you? Well, of course, you know I'm hoping that you're feeling good from the inside out and that all is well. Today, we're going to have a good chat about motherhood and mental health. And I thought it would be important that we tackle a little bit about mental health and motherhood and how the two flow together and how important it is for us as moms to be diligent about being kind to ourselves in the sense of taking care of our mental health and making sure that we are doing what we need to do to make sure that we are mentally healthy. But I am not going to do this episode alone. Today I have another special guest, and that special guest is one of my most favorite people, if not my favorite person. She's my favorite person in the whole wide world. My best friend, my sister, my older sister, she's my only sister, Janeen Smith-Scott. Janeen is a mom of two boys, one girl. She is a wife. She is a survivor. She is all of the things. And I can't wait for you guys to meet her. But before I bring Janeen in, I do want to ask that you share this episode with any mom that you think would benefit from this content. This episode and any other episode that you listen to of the Keep Your Cool Mama podcast. Please make sure that you subscribe and leave a review. Give me a rating just so I can know how you feel about the podcast. And so let's go ahead and get into this episode. Hello, Janeen.
Hello.
Welcome. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. As you know, I have been trying to get you on for quite some time, and it's finally the right time. So welcome.
Well, thank you.
Are you excited as I am?
I'm very excited to be here. I do want to bring up one concern because I don't understand why you had to say my oldest sister. They didn't need to know that. I don't think they needed to know that.
Well, she is. They were going to ask. Whoever doesn't know was going to want to know if I'm the youngest. Am I the oldest? Like, who's older? Who's younger? Not that it matters. But hey.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, well, let's get started.
Yes. Welcome to the podcast. So tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
Oh, okay. Well, as Sheila stated, I am a mom. I'm a mom of three. I have a daughter, my bonus baby, and she is, 17 years old. She just turned 17 years old in April.
That's crazy.
I know. I have two boys. One is 14 and the other is 10. All of the ages just sound crazy to me because it's like, where did the time go?
Too fast,
right? And it's so funny because Sheila and I's oldest children are back to back. We were pregnant at the same time. So my son, 14 years old, he's 7.5 months apart from Sheila's oldest and Sheila's middle child. So
yeah, I was pregnant. We were pregnant at the same time in between Grady. So I was pregnant with Malik when you found out you were pregnant with Grady, and then I was pregnant with Marquise when you were... No, never mind, y'all.
They're 7.5 months apart.
Did I get that
Don't
wrong?
even try the math. It's too late. It's late here.
Did I put your youngest in there?
No, you
I
didn't.
didn't mean to, because he is like way after
You didn't
Marquise.
say Christian.
Did I? Oh, okay. So yeah, they're close together, and it's been a ball.
It has been. There's never a dull moment, right? Never a dull moment when we all get together. Never a dull moment in our separate households, and we are always a part of our mental health is supporting each other.
Absolutely.
So we are always on the phone with each other.
All the time.
Yeah, whether we're talking or not, sometimes we can sit in silence because how many of us know that silence can also be therapy in itself?
It's the best.
So it's like leaning on each other's shoulder over the phone.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But other than that, like Sheila said, I am a wife. Yes. My goodness, we're coming up on 12 years this year, which is crazy to me, right? Crazy to me to think of. I mean, the time, again, has flown by. And I am a survivor. And I don't like to just say I've survived. I like to say that I'm at a point where I'm thriving.
Yes.
Because, that is always the goal, to thrive in spite of what I've been through. But at the same time, I'm also healing, and I think the two things can be true at once. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So we'll get into how you're a survivor soon here. But what I wanted to do, there was an article, I love the articles, and I wanted to start with this article that was speaking directly to mental health and how it affects moms. Something that we can base our conversation on. The name of this article is "What Moms Need Most is Their Mental Health." The title alone was like, yes, we absolutely do need that most. And it pulled me in with the title. So I'll read a little bit of this, and then I'll just outline the top challenges of busy moms. I'll just outline it a bit when I get to that point. The article says, lacking mental health support, too many American women experience emotional crisis as they navigate contemporary motherhood. As founder of ESME.com, Empowering Strong Moms Everywhere, every day I witness mothers who are lonely, exhausted, anxious, depressed, suffering from PTSD, and pushed to their psychological limits. Sexism is making women sick, warned Jessica Valentini. The constant threat of being attacked, insulted, and dismissed instills in women a sense of hypervigilance that's associated with psychological distress. Motherhood taps out women's depleted psychological resources, making them especially susceptible to mental health issues. Many moms don't have the time or energy to understand why they feel so awful. As a result, they internalize their feelings and do the best they can day after day. Ooh, I can relate to that. And so as far as the top challenges of busy moms, okay, I'll read this short paragraph. While hormones are often blamed for compromised psychological well-being in women, most of the mental health crises I hear about result from society's gender expectations and responses to motherhood. I've identified 10 challenges American mothers face as a result of inequality and sexism. Other factors also play a role, such as economic stress, racism, and classism. But the daily bombardment of social influences can compromise a mother's emotional and psychological well-being. Regardless of where she lives, who she loves, or what color she is, the following 10 challenges are those I hear most from busy moms. So I just want to go through these 10 and just pick out the ones that for us that we can identify with the most. So number one is mom guilt. Number two is sleep deprivation. Number three is work family balance. Number four, caregiving. Number five, children with chronic illnesses and special needs. Number six, work discrimination. Number seven, body image. Number eight, sexual assault / rape culture. Number nine, domestic violence and abuse. Number 10, solo motherhood. And, I want to add an 11th one and say, when we're dealing with trauma that has happened before we had children and after we've had children, and how that can affect motherhood as well, and how we mother. Mm-hmm. Is there one out of those that you think? I could say for me, I'll start with the work-family balance.
Yeah, I was thinking about that one.
Now, and it's not just the work-family balance. It's like the work / family / self balance. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's trying to maintain a relationship with my husband, my children, and myself. Trying to, make sure that I'm growing, that I'm evolving, that I'm just taking care of myself, and making sure that my children are taken care of physically, emotionally, spiritually, as far as like, just that they're good, and making sure that my husband is good and all of those things. And by the time you finish with making sure that the family is good, and then you got work, and then you're too tired to sometimes to even think about yourself, and then you look up as days, months, years have passed that you haven't even paid attention to what you need and what you want, and that does eventually take a toll on your mental health.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was exhausted just hearing you say all of those things. I know the feeling for sure. It is really difficult to, I mean, they have this balance, like this word balance, and a friend of mine said that she doesn't really like to use balance. She likes to use the word healthy rhythms, which I love that. I love that because sometimes we do have to give one area of our lives more attention, than the others, but we have to know how to prioritize it in a very healthy way, and just making sure that everyone gets, what they need, but we don't neglect ourselves in the process.
Yeah, that's tough though. Like the rhythm, I think that's a very good way of going about it. But sometimes I feel like I'm off beat. I'm not going with the rhythm. And I feel like this heavy load of trying to figure it all out. And it talked about loneliness. I know for me, even though I'm not in a sense lonely because I have support, but I think that there's a level of loneliness that us as moms can feel because there's just this heavy load of us having to figure out the rhythm or the balance. And it's like when we are not in rhythm, everything just seems to fall apart. And then I think that that's when mom guilt comes in and exhaustion comes in and all of those things, which then plays with our minds and makes us feel like we're not enough and like we can't seem to get it all together. And why does it look like everybody else has it together and I don't look like I have it together? And the mental load of it all just seems so impossible to bear. But yeah, I do agree with rhythm, but I think it's just a matter of finding
Oh, for sure.
that rhythm. Like, what should my rhythm be? Like, and then like it's the mom guilt of feeling like, okay, if I give myself too much attention, am I going to be looking like I'm selfish? But then also knowing that when I take care of myself, I'm ultimately taking care of everybody else.
And also realizing that the rhythm will change. You know what I mean? It's
That's
not
true.
something that's going to stay the same. And I know my biggest thing is being able to, go with the flow. And then there's the fear of the unknown, sometimes. And sometimes it's really hard for me to go with the flow.
Yeah,
So,
I can relate.
yeah. Yeah. But I mean, I will say that I think it's funny you were saying, like, sometimes how you find yourself. Like, I feel like I'm just offbeat. Sometimes I'm having trouble finding that rhythm. And it's like when our two-step isn't right, on our own, then we half step, it seems like everything else. So that's why it is so important that we make sure that we're filling ourselves up in a way that we are able to, else is able to benefit from the overflow. And I know that honestly, I can't do that if I haven't spent quality time with God.
Yeah, that's where the balance, that's where the rhythm, that's where you find your rhythm.
And that's where the peace comes from.
Absolutely.
Right. Because, everything, could be, going crazy and just, seem off rhythm, since we're using that. But normally when I start my day off, with God, if, I'm making time, setting that appointment and keeping that appointment, with God, and even throughout the day, it doesn't even just have to be, during that one specific, moment. We set aside moments, throughout the day to make sure that we're seeking Him for what we need. Because honestly, without Him, I don't know where I would be.
Hot mess. I would be a hot mess, and I have been a hot mess when I put God last. And you know what? To be honest, like the past couple of weeks, I've been so focused on other things and trying to make sure that everybody else is okay that I looked up and was like, when is the last time you spent time with God? Like, when is the last time, like, you've made it a priority? Like, because I definitely talk to God throughout the day. But, like, I mean, like, alone time. Like, sitting down and having a talk. Like, beyond, like, Lord, I need this, I need that. Help me with this, help me with that. Like, the intimacy of just sitting and not asking for things, but just being immersed in His presence. And when I do that, it's so good that you brought that up, because when I do that, everything else just flows. So it feels, even though sometimes it doesn't feel effortless, but then at the same time you feel like and I talk about the load, like, oh, I don't have to carry this load on my own. Like, that's like He's there to make sure that I don't have to do that. And so when I'm feeling that load, that heaviness, it's almost like sometimes I can feel like a tap on my shoulder, like, hey, like, you don't have to do that by yourself. Like, no, I didn't require you to do that. Like, you need to ask for my assistance. Yeah, that's a good point. So let's get a little deeper into your story. We talked about, the 10 things that could be challenging for moms, and how, as far as busy moms. So let's talk about the challenges of trauma and how that can affect your motherhood. So let's say, well, if you could just quickly give, and I know I feel like saying quickly is a little I feel like it's rude, but for the sake of time, because it has been a journey. For those who don't know your story, as far as how your trauma started right when you were in the midst of, motherhood, and how that has affected you. Well, we'll get into let's start with the story.
Okay. Yeah, sure. So, yeah, and the trauma of being in the midst of motherhood, it did start, prior to that. I think there's different forms of trauma, but this would be the ultimate.
Yes.
You know what I mean? This would be the thing that blindsided me and just completely changed the trajectory, I would say, of my life and the way I even viewed life. So I was married 2 years. Actually, I just celebrated my 2-year anniversary on July 16th. I was married to the love of my life, and my best friends. And we had just celebrated our 2-year anniversary. We were together. Oh my goodness, we were together 5-6 years. I honestly, right now, and another thing with trauma, it can mess with your memory, sometimes. So,
yeah.
But we were together, around 5 or 6 years and married 2 years. So we celebrated again our 2-year anniversary on July 16th, which was a Monday. And on that Friday, July 20th, he was senselessly murdered. And to top it off, I was 3.5 months pregnant with our first child. So completely blindsided, completely just changed. It just turned my life upside down. I began living a different reality. I was a wife who was expecting, and then all of a sudden, just within a 5-day time frame, I became a widow who was expecting. Obviously planning a life to spend with my husband and my newborn child. But yeah, and then after my son was born, and even prior to that, it was as though I went into survival mode. So I had to make sure that I was, staying strong, for him, to make sure that he survived. So I felt like I couldn't fall apart, because if I fell apart, then it's a possibility that he wouldn't make it, into this world healthy. So I wanted to make sure that definitely happened. And it happened. He was born a very healthy boy. And my late husband's namesake, Grady. And when he was a newborn, that is when I had my first encounter with anxiety and had no idea. And when I say anxiety, I'm going to say my first encounter with a panic attack. I had no idea what was going on. I thought that I was dying, literally. He was in his playpen bassinet, he was in that, and it felt like the walls were closing in on me. Felt like I could barely breathe. I remember, calling those closest to me, just fearful, thinking like, okay, this could be the last phone call, because I thought that it was it for me. Later to find out that it was a panic attack, and it was the first of many panic attacks. It became just like a prison, it was, I felt like I couldn't really go anywhere alone. Like while I was driving, a panic attack could occur. I could be in a room full of people and it could happen, but I felt like I needed to always be around somebody at that point, because if I was alone, it would just be a little too scary for me. So I remember just always never really going home and always trying to surround myself with, loved ones at that time. So that was my first, encounter.
Seeing you navigate being a new mom and trying to be present for your child, but then also going through what you were going through personally and almost feeling like you had to like seeing you have to figure that out was always I know like you were going through it, but you just appeared to be so on my end, like so strong. So, but then later on, knowing like you're just trying to survive and trying to just get to the next moment. And there is a certain amount of, I think, strength that God gives us in those type of situations. And knowing how important it is for us to lean on God in those situations as well, because Lord knows like where we would be, and you specifically, if it wasn't for his, grace and mercy and his strength. But seeing you have to figure out, navigate motherhood, navigate being a widow, and trying to just be, it was hard to watch, but then at the same time it's like, I just want to be there for her as much as I can. But yeah, okay, so moving from that point of your life into the latter years, how has, because I know you eventually started going to, like, you had like a start kind of stop, like with therapy. So what it's like to be diligent about your mental health and how that affects you, and then when you're not diligent about it and how it affects you. So we're going to speak specifically to motherhood. Let's start with when you weren't diligent about your mental health and making sure that you were okay mentally, and just engulfed in motherhood when you weren't diligent about it. Like, how did that affect your motherhood journey?
Yeah, I mentioned the survival mode prior to Grady being born, but then even after Grady was born, then there was the survival mode. It's like, I can't fall apart because he's here now, and I have to make sure that I raise him. And I will say that neglecting myself eventually caused those panic attacks to occur. So I always say that if you don't deal, with your emotions, if you don't deal, with your feelings, if you stuff them, if you internalize them, and you don't give them a place to actually breathe, and you're not able to release them in a healthy way, then eventually they will deal with you, whether you like it or not. And I was always trying to remain in control. However, eventually I was controlled, in a sense. It felt like I was controlled by, that anxiety. And I would say, as far as motherhood is concerned, that affected me in a way where, it affected me in a way where I don't feel, when I wasn't diligent, with taking care of myself, it affected me in a way where, and I'm trying to find the right words for this. So our children are always watching. Mm-hmm. They're always watching. And even when we bottle things up, I believe that they can still feel that in a sense.
Absolutely.
And sometimes they, if we don't show them what it looks like to deal with their emotions in a healthy way, then they could ultimately find it difficult to be able to deal with their emotions in a healthy way. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that was something that kind of rubbed off on my oldest child, because for me, I was always trying to hold it together. So I would see times where he would just try to hold it together instead of actually verbalizing, and recognizing what was going on inside of him. Mm-hmm. So I say that to say, even though I'm trying to, push through and survive, so that he can be okay, I now know that it's really important for me to take care of myself so that my children know what it looks like to take care of themselves. Mm-hmm. And when I'm not diligent about it, sometimes, that can, we find that we can become frustrated. I know me personally, I can become frustrated, mm-hmm. And easily irritated and agitated sometimes. I'm like, what is wrong with me? Where is this coming from? Well, mm-hmm. It's because I'm not dealing with the root, mm-hmm. Of the matter. I'm not digging deep to find out where the source is coming from. Yeah. And, unfortunately, that can have a negative effect on our interactions and our relationships, without us really realizing that that's where it's coming from, and it's coming from that unresolved,
gotta get
those unresolved issues, the unresolved trauma.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can relate. So on the other side of that, because I know that you are actively, you are an active therapy participant.
I am.
Now, presently. Excuse me. So how has that affected your motherhood? And I'm sure in a positive way. So like, how has that opened your eyes now that you are going consistently? Mm-hmm. Like, are there any changes that you see? Are there any, within yourself that's helped you to be a mom, or, however it has affected you?
Yeah, it's definitely helped with communication and being able to first identify, where my emotions stem from.
Yeah,
right?
That's important.
Because sometimes when you don't know where your emotions stem from, you feel overwhelmed.
Yes.
And without you being able to say, okay, I understand that this stems from this, it could become very frustrating, mm-hmm. which adds even more stress, to your plate. Speaking personally, I know that was something that I had to deal with, but diligently making sure that I'm attending to my mental health, through therapy. I think there's various ways you can do it, through prayer, meditation, journaling, mm-hmm. Being able to have that healthy release. It allows me to be able to better communicate with my husband, better communicate with my children. Mm-hmm. And I see a change in them, because I've made a change in myself. And a lot of times I know we can look to others and say, well, why can't you just, mm-hmm. fix what's going on with you?
Right.
And a lot of times the change really can begin with us.
It does, especially as women. Like, it really does start with us. Like, mm-hmm. I really do feel like we're the starting point for change in our households. Like, absolutely. When we, I know, like, when they see us make a change, like they see us doing something positive, they're like, hey, like, how can I get in on that? Let me start doing what she's doing. Or even unknowingly, like, they start to move in the direction that we're going. But then, like, even on the opposite side of that, when we're like just when we are just a hot mess, I feel like everybody else is a hot mess. I don't know if it's just me, but it just feels like everything else is just like out of control when we're out of control. I'm not sure why it's like that. I feel like there's a scripture about that.
Proverbs 31.
Yes,
for sure.
Absolutely. You are correct. You are correct. Yes, and I can't say that I truly understand why God made us the starting place for peace in the household and order. I don't know why. Sometimes it frustrates me, if I'm honest, because sometimes I just don't feel like it. Sometimes I feel like just falling apart.
That's real.
But then at the same time, I do feel honored to know that I can have that much of an impact. So definitely, when we are diligent about making our mental health a priority, it has a direct impact on our children. It definitely does, because it will follow them. It will follow them for the rest of their lives, no matter what the circumstance may be. Maybe you are mentally healthy and your children in return are mentally healthy, and they are able to control their emotions in a healthy way and things of that nature. But even in those times, on the opposite side of that, when it's not like that, it affects your children, because I know that personally. You know, so I guess my last question would be, what are ways in which you prioritize yourself? How do you prioritize yourself to make sure that you are on top of your mental health and things of that nature?
So I take moments to myself, because I have to set aside time for myself in order to be able to process, to be able to release. And I will do that. Sometimes it'll be 5 to 10 minutes, just going in my room, because that is like my safe place. It's my little oasis. It's where I can get away. So in my room, I have candles. I have a meditation mat. And there I pray, I meditate. I mentioned journaling. I reflect often. I'm a writer, so sometimes I'll even, write poetry to express how I feel. And sometimes it's just really just me reflecting. But yeah, I mean, and something as simple as just breathing. I don't take breathing for granted. And every day I actually make it a point to thank God that I'm able to breathe, and I'm able to breathe with ease.
Yeah.
And that's such a release for me when I'm able to just breathe through my stress. So even if I'm not able to just take time away, I prioritize myself moment by moment. I'm a big advocate of making the most, out of moments, even no matter how simple, those moments may be. So that may, again, mean breathing. So if I'm in a moment of stress, I just take the time and I do breathing exercises, and I feel much better, after the fact. Breathing actually can bring clarity.
It's a reset for me.
It is, for sure.
Yeah, definitely brings Clarity. I agree with that.
Journaling brings clarity. You know, I know my thoughts and my emotions never do me any good when I keep them bottled up.
Man.
But once I'm able to release them, you know, on paper or even in my notes on my phone, I feel like there is a weight, you know, that's lifted off of me. So whether it be through prayer, whether it be through journaling, I need to release it some kind of way.
Yeah.
My sister, I think we talked about this earlier. She is one of my biggest support systems, you know, friends, you know, that I can lean on. I know that I can reach out to via text, audio message, you know, over the phone, whatever the case may be. I know that I have someone that I can go to. And sometimes that is not always easy for me. My sister will be the first to tell you. Sometimes I don't make it a point to call and say, hey, this is what I'm going through.
No,
sometimes she won't know until after I've processed.
I'm like, what's wrong?
What's
wrong?
right?
You okay? What's wrong?
And it's like, okay, I'm not ready to talk about it. But, you know, once I journal, you know, a lot of times I'm able to talk about it. And sometimes I am able to talk about it. But just having her there to be able to, you know, just be there helps. Let's see. I'm trying to think. I feel like I'm missing something. Taking time away, you know, even leaving home. I can tell you just yesterday, especially like, you know, when you get these nice, beautiful days, I was able to get away and I said, you know what, guys, I'm taking some me time. And I drove up to the lake and, you know, I sat there and I love my happy places are in the car and also where the water is. You know, we have a lake by us. So it doesn't have to be complicated. I try not to make it complicated. I try to, you know, make the most out of even the simple moments. So
I think the key to what you're saying is creating space. Whether it's the physical space, like you said, like with your meditation, like you have a space in your room that is dedicated to I feel like your mental health, what helps you to release. You have a space for that. And creating space isn't just a physical space, but creating space in time for yourself. So saying like, I need a moment to myself and leaving and, you know, when you can to get those moments, creating that space and time just for you. Because I think the mental load can be so heavy for us as moms that sometimes we feel like, well, it just is what it is. It just feels impossible. I'm just going to just keep going through my day and just do what I can when I can. But the key is making time and space for yourself and knowing that you are worthy of that time and that space.
That's right. You are
so that you can mentally cleanse, just be in a state where you can take care of yourself and everybody else. Because if you're just going and not stopping, there's no way to create a time and space and time, or just the physical space for yourself if you're going and never stopping. There has to be a time where you stop for you, give yourself what you need, because, you know, we can't be in therapy at every hour of the day. So, and some of us, you know, can't afford therapy. So we have to have those other things around that where we can have that time that's just for us so that we can be okay for ourselves and our families.
And therapy. I don't know why I forgot to mention that. That is absolutely how I make time for myself, by making sure that I set those appointments and I keep those appointments.
Oh, yeah. That's
because I will tell you that sometimes, a lot of times actually, before therapy, I'm like, I don't have the mental energy for this.
Yeah,
I don't feel like talking about my feelings, you know, but at the same time, sometimes I'm like, okay, I got to get this out. But I will tell you, each and every time that I go to therapy, it is always beneficial. And it always helps to connect the dots for me in some way.
Yeah.
Because your therapist will, when you get that right therapist, and if you don't find the right one, make sure you keep looking until you do. Don't give up. Because the right therapist is so worth it. And they will ask you those questions that will begin to again, connect the dots for you. It will be able to answer questions that you didn't have the answer to before. Right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that, and then I have a good cry sometimes during therapy. Listen, a good cry
Cleansing.
is cleansing, whether it be in therapy or not. Just allowing yourself the space to cry, instead of holding that in, that is self-care in itself.
And I think also, like, with therapy and just other forms of talking and getting it out and getting help, is knowing that you don't have to have it all figured out. Like, there
That's
are
key.
going to be many times where you don't have the answers. And I know for me, sometimes I'm like, I know I can figure this out. Like, I don't need to ask anybody. Like, I can figure this out. That in itself is exhausting, because it's like, if somebody else can help you come up with an answer, a solution, or just some type of release, if somebody else can help you, why are you going to put that all on yourself to figure it out?
All with that need to always be in control.
Yes.
And in many of us, I mean, as moms, I feel like we always feel like we need to be in control.
Right.
Because, we are so important, such an important component in our household.
Exactly.
But then also, if you've experienced trauma, a lot of times you always want to be in control because you're trying to control that narrative because you don't want to see what's going to come next. I can attest to that.
Yeah.
So it's about relinquishing control. Sometimes we will be wrecking our brains trying to figure out a solution, or, just, it's like, I'm stressed, but it's like so simple. We're trying to figure out these answers. And a lot of times it's like, we don't even stop to go to the source to pray. It's like just a simple, taking time out of your day to, you know what, God, I can't do this alone. You told me to cast my burdens on you, and
I don't want to do it alone.
And I don't want to do it alone.
Yeah.
It's hard. I don't even know why I'm trying to do it alone. Why am I playing tug of war?
Yeah. Having control for me in my life presently is starting to look less and less attractive. It's like, you know what?
It's ugly. No, I'm joking. It's still cute, girl.
It is. No, the need to have control all the time is ugly. It's pointless. It doesn't do anything for me but cause more stress and anguish and all of these things that I don't have time for. And it's just starting to look more and more unattractive.
Self-inflicted pain.
Yes. It's like, you know what? You go ahead and do this. I have plenty of episodes about that. Like, just relinquishing control and just and delegating. I'm learning more about just delegating, because that in itself is a mental, that's mental health.
And letting go of expectations.
Yes.
Always expecting things to go exactly how we planned, or exactly how we feel like others, should react, and then we end up disappointed.
Yes.
If they didn't handle things the way we felt like they should handle it, whether it be our husband, our children.
Oh my goodness.
It's exhausting. It's overwhelming, and it's unnecessarily exhausting. Yeah, I mean, just letting go of unrealistic expectations. Everything is not always going to go as planned. And we all know that God's plans are not our plans. His ways are not our ways. They are so much higher than ours. So that's when we got to put our trust in him.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been an amazing episode. It's everything that I dreamed that it would be.
Yep.
Thank you for coming on, Janeen. I really appreciate it. You are the best.
No, you are the best. I love you so much. Always a pleasure.
Love you too.
My sissy.
Love you too.
Can I add one more thing?
Yes.
Okay. Because Sheila mentioned that sometimes we can't afford, therapy. I encourage everyone, if that is you, because I've been there, if that is you, seek resources, seek therapy. Sometimes there's free options in your community, and then also if you're a working mom, they have EAP programs. If you're not familiar with it, ask your job if they have them. That's how I started with therapy. You get a certain amount of free sessions.
Right.
So look into that. But don't stop until you get what you need. If you need help, if you know that something is consistently off, and you know that something is wrong, where you're just always down, feeling hopeless, you're feeling alone, whatever the case may be, if it seems off, then I want you to talk to a trusted friend, find that therapy, but find that help that you need, because you're needed. Yeah. You are needed.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I just don't ever want you to give up. I didn't give up.
You didn't.
And I battled anxiety and depression. I didn't mention the depression.
Oh yes.
And that could be for another episode, but I want I want to let you know that I'm here, and I'm so glad that I didn't give up, because there was a moment in time where I felt like, does my life even matter? I'm a Christian, and in the Christian faith, it's like a no-no, as far as committing suicide, not even thinking about that, And so I said, okay, suicide is an option. I can't do that. But at the same time, it's not to say that you won't feel that way. You know what I mean? But right. Don't let that be the option you turn to.
Yes.
Right,
absolutely.
A temporary moment, I don't want that to be the end, of your life, that is, again, needed. You are loved, you are needed, you are worthy. And I just want to make sure that you know that. Okay. So get the help you need.
Yes. And make yourself a priority.
And if no one has told you that they love you, we love you.
Yes, we do. Absolutely. Yes. Thank you for sharing that. That was important. That was very important. So guys, again, please share with any mom that you think would benefit greatly from this episode, that you think would enjoy the conversation that we just had. And I love you guys. Before I let you go, seriously, before I let you go, please subscribe and leave a review with 5 stars if this podcast is inspiring you and helping you to grow. Let's spread the positivity so that we are visible to other mamas out there trying to find her own greatness. And if you need some advice or guidance regarding your own personal growth while tackling motherhood, please email me at keepyourcoolmama@gmail.com. Love you guys.